You've just joined the Prepper Broadcasting Network, where we promote self-reliance and independence. The views and opinions expressed are strictly those of the host or their guests. Visit us in the interactive chat room at prepperbroadcasting.com.
This broadcast also brought to you in part by Emergency Essentials. Power outage, hurricanes, flash floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, solar flares, job loss, zombies, Armageddon. It doesn't matter what you're preparing for, Emergency Essentials will help. From tips for preparedness to food and water storage to ready-to-go emergency kits. Visit their website at beprepared.com and let Emergency Essentials help you prepare for, well, anything. Tonight's broadcast also brought to you in part by Seed for Security. For carefully selected, open-pollinated, non-GMO grain and vegetable seeds, visit the Seed for Security website. There you will also find many homesteading articles and photographs taken at the Seed for Security farm. We welcome you at www.seedforsecurity.com. Once again, www.seedforsecurity.com.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Preparing for Life Storms with Bear Prepper. Today is Tuesday, August 7th, 2012, and it's my pleasure to welcome you in tonight. We are on air from 8 to 9 p.m. Central Time on the first and third Tuesdays of the month on American Preppers Radio, powered by PrepperBroadcasting.com. We broadcast 10 different hosts 7 days a week, and the next week we'll be adding 2 more new shows. Next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, we will have Off-Grid Preppers with Barbara Fix and longtime radio show host Big John Lipscomb. Then Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central is the premiere, The Lost Art of Prepping with Melee Bostic. And then, of course, at 8 p.m., it's Prepping with Goat Hollow, where he'll be talking about, with the continuing drought in the Midwest, corn prices have hit an all-time high on the commodities market. Beef and pork prices are primed to soar. So for a discussion on keeping a few backyard chickens, the advantages, the pitfalls, and gaining permission from your city, yeah, right, like we all want that, huh? Be sure to check out for any other shows at PrepperBroadcasting.com. So tonight we're going to open our discussion with Dave Pillows from Happy to Survive. Hi, Dave.
Hey, good evening. How are you?
I'm great. I understand that you're a prepper. Now, you're not one of those media preppers, are you? Or are you a real prepper?
I'm a real prepper.
Well, how did you get started in prepping? And then, of course, you have this Happy to Survive iPad application. And what it is, it's an e-zine, right? So it's an e-magazine?
That's correct. A few years ago, Apple launched its own newsstand where they had a lot of electronic magazines that you could buy in a store, like Time Magazine, People Magazine, and other national magazines that you could see full color on the iPad and all of their glory, just like you could buy at an airport newsstand, except it was highly accessible, and Apple newsstand it could be purchased on any iPad device.
And so did that lead you to prepping, or did prepping lead you to your e-zine?
Well, what I have always, even before probably the term prepping existed, or I even knew it existed, I think that growing up on a ranch, we always had the self-reliant motto of, fix it up, make it work, or do without. And so much of living off the land and things that was always really ingrained in us. And I think that my journey is a similar story to other people's, in that with the economy and things that were happening around in the marketplace, it just that became more galvanized within me. And the magazine itself, so that's kind of my personal story, the magazine itself on the iPad, Happy to Survive magazine, really became just seeing how the mainstream media was portraying preppers, like, for example, the National Geographic Channel. I noticed while watching the show that they would roll through these people really quick. They would make them to look kind of like nuts, and they wouldn't give any time so you could really emotionally connect with the people while they were doing what they were doing, and then the benefits of prepping. And so the magazine grew out of wanting to have something on the national stage that really didn't slant things and just gave positive messages. And that's actually how, I connected with you all, in the sense that you all do the same positive message and on the radio and have really helpful tips. And so that's kind of what we're all about, is just different stories, different tips. We featured Ed Pilgrim from the forum in this issue, and he's talking about how to make soap. So there are a lot of great. This also has how to make a cob oven. So a lot of great prepping tips, like gardening tips. Just a lot of people are interested in that are interested in self-reliance.
Well, I have a couple questions here. I understand that Prepper Broadcasting is featured in this month's article, and I believe the Homestead Honeys are going to be in a feature magazine.
That's correct.
That is exciting. And who can submit an article for your e-magazine if it's good enough to be submitted?
Really anybody. I mean, we have an email address that's just info@happytosurvive.com. We really welcome really anybody to submit an article. A lot of people say, feel like they've got something on their chest, feel like they know or have maybe just as something like, hey, I found out a way to build a chicken coop, and it's better than kind of what I've seen before, and I'd really love to take a picture of this with the idea in mind that I'd like to help other people. And so people can do that, and we can even if you're not a writer, content is the biggest thing, and we can clean that up and edit it. Or if they are a writer, a lot of people, the identity comes into question where they're like, well, I really don't want to put my name on it, and that's not a problem either. I mean, we can leave your name off, or it can be written under a pseudonym. So we we like that, and we encourage that, because we want our articles written by experts. And a lot of people hearing this might say, well, I don't really feel like an expert on that. Well, if you built one chicken coop, to use that same example, you're an expert because you've built one more than a lot of people have. So you're going to be pretty well. Yeah. I've only built one chicken coop. It was about 30 feet by 60 feet, and so by the time I got all the nails, I'm like, okay, I feel pretty confident about chicken coops at this point.
There you go. So it's anything to do with prepping, and it can be any homesteading or anything like it, because I know that we have a lot of homesteaders. Now, for a first-time prepper, is it a magazine that would kind of get them a little more confidence? Because I know that their knowledge is, or at least they feel their knowledge is so thin. I think they know more than they think they know. But is it something that would appeal to the new prepper? Because we have a whole lot of brand new preppers on my radio show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the things we try to hit with the content is we try to make it where it's very applicable to really all levels, and even experts. I mean, you know this from being an expert. So the articles, yes, are very approachable. Where if somebody doesn't know anything about it, homesteading, prepping, they can learn a lot. And if they're an expert, it's like even experts will take introductory courses a lot of times. They'll go out there with their kids or read through we did an article, for example, on reading through the Boy Scout handbook when it comes to survival and homesteading. And we had more experts say, this was the most like primer, basic book. But this is great because even experts get a lot out of really simple content. It's even if you know a lot of it, there's still going to be something that you're really going to glean from it. So
yeah. I learn from everybody I interact with, whether they're brand new or been doing it for 40 years. There's always something each one of us can learn because none of us has all the knowledge, and knowledge is power. Folks, if you want to call in and ask Dave some questions, the call-in number is 347-202-0228, and please don't forget to press 1. Otherwise, you're just going to stay on hold. So now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say thank you for bringing up the homesteading. I'm really glad you brought that up because we actually do have some homesteading articles, and that's really important to us because it's a lot really of a similar theme. And so that's kind of one thing people will be disappointed in is I thought every one of the articles was going to be hardcore prepping, and so it's really not the theme of the magazine because it's more diverse. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So thank you for that.
Well, a lot of us, some of us call ourselves homesteaders, some of us call ourselves preppers. I think we're all both because they kind of cross over. There's really no difference, Now, then you have your crazy preppers that, but they still want to do half this stuff too. So, I mean, it's all kinds. Now, what kind of is there a free trial or something like that for people to check it out, and is it just available on the iPad, or are you going to develop an Android?
We're going to try to develop an Android and try to develop a PDF version, and then hopefully move into print if things go well. At this point, we're mainly available on the iPad, and you can find us just by searching "Happy to Survive." In iTunes by searching "Happy to Survive" in iTunes. We also have a Facebook page where a lot of people love to at facebook.com/Happy to Survive. A lot of people like to come and interact there. So, we invite people to do both of those.
Wonderful. I just posted them into the chat room, and DV posted the iTunes app into there. So, folks, if you have any questions, get them out now. I'm not seeing anybody in queue, and I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to keep talking. Now, give me an example of a couple of the articles that we would be able to see this time.
Well, what you can do is, and I forgot to answer your question about the free trial. There is a free trial, and there's a one article sampler too. So you've kind of got two options. When you subscribe, you get the first month for free to check it out. And so,
wonderful.
like this, for example, we had how to make a cob oven that we talked about.
Right.
We also put in a butterfly garden article to have the variety, because I think a lot of people that are wanting to homestead wanted to go off the grid. So we'll have articles about like solar packs, best solar packs or solar gear. One of the things, we've got another writer named Tim that's researching best blades, for cutting blades around the farm. But also we've had some really good humorous articles. the July issue, last month's issue, we had an article on actually hitchhiking. And we have a writer named Chris who actually went out to Portland, Oregon, to a hitchhiking town, and just like really just interviewed hitchhikers,
nice,
and homeless people. A lot of people write in there like, well, this is a really kind of humorous story, because the guy Corncob was the person he interviewed, who was the expert hitchhiker, and he would do things like, say, hold humorous signs like, I don't think. And the reason why is obviously because if you lost your home in the current state of affairs, or you had to have lack of transportation like in the old days or really the new days, hitchhiking is becoming something that people have are needing to do. And so we wanted to kind of a primer on that. Now, a lot of people might hear that and hear, well, that's kind of far-fetched, but I kind of see it as like learning how to drive a manual transmission or a standard. Even if you don't have that type of car, it's great knowledge to have, because if some get an emergency, you might have to take them to the emergency room. If you don't know how to drive a manual, then it's going to be pretty bad for you. And I don't foresee myself as hitchhiking anytime soon, but I certainly learned a lot from the article.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that 100%. And I have a question for you. If we subscribe, do we have access to your previous articles?
That's a great question. I think that it starts you on the new. I think it starts you on the current month. But there's the great thing about the magazine is there's a lot of different there's a lot of different options, a lot of different flexibility. There's also an individual per article price. So if you hear about all this and you say, well, I'm not really interested in cob ovens, but I really like that hitchhiking article, that sounds like that'd be kind of funny to read about corn cob, then somebody could go and they could buy that individually. So there's also that option.
Okay, great. That is wonderful. Well, is there anything else you would like to add or let our listeners know before we let you go?
No, that's it. I just appreciate all you guys do. So keep moving forward, and we'll keep on being happy to survive.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And, folks, don't forget to check out Happy to Survive. Dave Pills was nice enough to come in here and talk to us about it. And Prepper Chickie in the chat room said she's already reading it, and she loves it. So there you go. Again, thank you so much, Dave, for coming on.
Okay, thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, so, folks, don't forget to check that out if you have that iPod. And I'm going to be watching for when he gets it on the Android so I can check it out, too, because I really want to check it out. So now let's go ahead and get on to tonight's discussion about communications. When the power is off and phones go out, the Internet is down, and when police, fire, and hospital services are overwhelmed, amateur radio operators are there to take up the slack as emergency communication volunteers. They have, in fact, been in virtually all disasters in recent memory: hurricanes, fires, ice storms, earthquakes, floods, and so on. With a little forethought and a few bucks, you can prepare yourself for similar events in future and avoid being incommunicado when you need it the most. So here are some simple criteria that I've found for setting up an emergency communication system. 1, it should be easy to operate. If you can't operate it, it's not going to do you any good. And, folks, that's my problem. I have such a mismatch of a system that I have an antenna. I don't know which one it goes to. I don't know how to do anything. So don't do what I did. Do it better. And that's one of the reasons we're having this guest on. 2, it must have an effective range. So if you want to communicate with your family 5 miles away or your YouTube friend 500 miles away, you're going to make sure whatever you choose is going to get done what you need to get done. 3, it should have a modest amount of protection against interference. I thought about that one, and what does it mean? Well, I think it more depends on what you're preparing for. If you're preparing for a solar storm, well, then you better have a lot of protection, because that's when you're going to need your Faraday cages and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, your communication equipment is going to be worthless. If you're just simply preparing for the next hurricane to come through, then you're going to buy something different and prepare slightly different for your interference. 4, it needs to be inexpensive. For example, low cost, low maintenance, no monthly fees. If it's not something you're going to keep up and keep on hand, then it's not going to do you any good. Next, it needs to be ready and available. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if you're planning on bugging out, you're not going to buy this room full of all these boxes and equipment and have this beautiful base station, because how are you going to get it out of there? Yeah, you may be able to pack it up and get it out of there in 2 hours, but what if you only have 20 minutes? So all those things need to be taken into account. And then, of course, last but not least, you need to be able to operate it off-grid. What happens when there's an emergency? We lose power. So enough said on that one. Excuse me. There are at least 5 communication systems that more or less meet these criteria. Some have big drawbacks, others minor ones. In making your choice, you should examine your own needs and match them with the appropriate system. So now I'd like to introduce you to a fellow YouTuber who will be helping us to understand the basics and also answer our questions. He has been a prepper since late 1979 and a licensed ham operator since 1985. So let's give a big welcome to the old geezer. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Hey, Bear Prepper, it is nice to talk to you. And boy, did you give me one heck of a homework assignment.
I kind of figured I would, and I'm so happy that you were willing to take this on, because I really don't have a clue on this one.
Well, you're going to find out that not only am I Carl, but I am also an Elmer, at least an Elmer for the folks that are on the Prepper Broadcasting Network.
Oh, how cool is that?
That is cool. All right, let me start with a small intro here, because I'm going to cover much more than just CB and ham, but I am going to try very carefully not to get too technical or down in the weeds. One of the things that I worry about more than anything else is, how does a prepper's needs for communications differ from a general hobbyist or a ham radio guy? The biggest thing also, you were talking about was the expense. And what do you need it for? There's a lot of folks that sit there and go, well, I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna listen to the shortwave and everything else. But let me give you a little thumbnail of a little story. Back in 2005, here where I live at in Central Virginia, we had Hurricane Isabel come through, and it knocked the power out for 7 days, and the rain was pouring down steadily the entire time. In about 3 days, our 2 local AM radio stations in the town that I live in went down and off the air because their generators ran out of fuel.
Awesome.
All the power was out because the transformers were getting blown up by lightning strike after lightning strike. Cell phones lasted about 2 days, and they died. And, of course, when the power went out, most people's internet was gone. But there were ham radio operators that had gone to the firehouse. They had gone to the hospital. They had gone to the Red Cross shelters. And they were broadcasting along and helping folks out that had the radios to listen to them. What we found on the local radio station is that things have changed over the years. Now, even your local radio station has a big satellite dish outside, and most of their programming comes down from the satellite. And the poor engineer that's there doesn't have a clue as to what's going on 20 feet out his door. But other stations out of the affected area may be still broadcasting. So let's talk a little bit about what you have on hand. Most people don't even think about it, but the best AM and FM radio you have for picking up stations at long range are in your vehicles. Your vehicle is a big generator. It's got a large amount of fuel, and it's got a great AM and FM radio inside it. The only problem is when it's an ice storm or it's pouring rain outside, it's a little inconvenient to get to it. But never forget that your best AM and FM radio is in your vehicle. Now let me talk about an excellent home and retreat AM and FM radio receiver that does a lot of stuff long range. And also, Barrett, let me promise you at this point, I will send you some URLs in an email that you can post on your Prepping for Life Storms site so that folks can kind of look on their own for things that I talk about tonight.
Wonderful. And also, folks, if we have questions afterwards, maybe we can get Old Geezer to answer them and we'll post them up there.
Yep, good. All right. So that basically was AM and FM except for the radio receiver I'm going to talk about, which is actually available out on Amazon. Oh, by the way, for everybody listening, I don't sell anything. I have just found over the years that certain items work really well and they're not horribly expensive and they meet my criteria for it. It wasn't expensive and it works great. Okay. There's a radio called a Superradio III. It's available on Amazon. It looks almost like a boom box. Takes 6 D-cell batteries, and for FM, it's okay. Nothing to get excited about. But it is the most awesome AM radio receiver to use inside your house.
Uh-huh.
And with 6 D-cell alkaline batteries, it runs for over 200 hours. And then here's the really great news. The thing is under $60.
Oh, wow, that's a good price.
Yes, it's a very good price. And, a little bit of judicious shopping around, and yes, it's out there. You can get one of those. Then you have a very good AM station. I'm about 285 miles from New York City, and yet in the daytime, with the super radio, when I've got it cranked up and the conditions are okay, and again in the daytime, not the nighttime, I can pick up some of the New York AM radio stations like WABC, etc.
Wow.
So it has very, very good reception capability, especially if you're out in a rural area. Next item I want to talk about is reliable range. There are so many claims that you see on radio equipment about the range that you get. One of the little radios that I love a lot are called FRS radios. They're a family radio service. They come in little plastic blister packs. They're little handy talkies. Look like something kids would use that you can find in Walmart or Best Buy or Target or any number of stores. You'll see 2 of them in a package, and it says, this thing has a range, can be used for this, that, or the other thing, including hunting, fishing, camping, up 30 miles, and that's not true.
No. I have a set. I think we were lucky if we got 2 miles.
Yeah, and 2 miles is pretty good considering from where you're at in Texas. That's about it for line of sight. But they're really handy for around the retreat and almost using as an intercom, especially when the power's out. They have 14 channels on them, and I use mine all the time. You just clip it on your belt. It's about the size of the palm of your hand, and it'll fit in it, and works beautifully. The other nice part about it is it's ultra high frequency, so it actually in a suburban or even an urban environment, the signal actually penetrates buildings pretty good. So that's probably another list on things to buy. Under $50, Walmart, Amazon. They're made by Cobra. They're made by Midland. They're made by most of the old CB manufacturers. And they're actually all really made in China, but what the heck. And then next I'm going to talk a little bit about CB radio, because CB radio is very, very handy when you need to talk back and forth. For example, if you need to leave your area and you're in 2 vehicles, bailing out, bugging out, whatever you want to call it, having a CB radio in the car, in both cars, to talk back and forth is a very handy thing. CBs, again, are available at this particular point at truck stops, on Amazon, Walmart even, for under $70 for the set, probably another $30 for the antenna. Reliable range on the CB radio? I'd say 4 miles, maybe 5. And, again, when I'm talking reliable, that means 95% of the time when you key the microphone and you say, help, somebody will be able to hear you, in between the static, etc.
Okay.
All right. I'd love to take some calls. I'm wondering if anybody wants to call in before I go into the ham radio section, because that is a bit more technical and a little bit more complex, and I want to kind of take that one a little slow.
We actually have Prepper Chickie in the queue.
Okay.
She's been waiting since the beginning to talk to you. Prepper Chickie, you there?
Hello.
Hello, Prepper Chickie.
Hello, how are you?
I am just fine. What can we do for you?
Oh, well, you kind of answered some of my questions that I was going to ask, but I was going to ask, what order would you suggest we purchase communications if we're totally new? You said the FRS radio and the CV.
Right. Okay. It starts with, it's not so much an order of purchase, it's what your need is.
Right.
To communicate, you should have somebody to communicate with, and then you have to determine how far away they are or are going to be.
Okay.
For basic communications, I would say, I absolutely start with an AM and FM radio, because you want to be able to at least hear local radio broadcasts if there's an emergency in your area. And I'm not talking about long-term grid down. I'm talking about things that happen all the time, storms, whatever. Then probably, if you're talking with family, et cetera, I'd say FRS, if they're within a half a mile to a mile. Next on my list would probably be a ham 2-meter handy-talkie set, which I will talk about a lot more, in a little bit. Because then you can hear the amateur radio operators that are at the emergency centers and talking back and forth. And, for example, during Hurricane Isabel for us and ice storm, and when we had the earthquake, and that was followed by Irene, followed by Tropical Storm Lee, the hams were doing a great bunch of assistance, letting people know which gas stations were still operating, where you could buy batteries at, where food was available, where you could get ice, where you could, how you could get to the hospital if you were a nurse, or how you could get a hold of an ambulance, because all the phone lines were down. How could you call 911? So the 2-meter ham rig is very, very handy.
Okay.
So that would probably be my that would probably be my list.
Okay, I have one more question about. I just saw a radio that was on sale on one of my discount sites that I go on, and it was a wind-up emergency weather radio thing. I don't know. Is that the AM radio or where it alerts you to the weather? Is that the same thing?
Well, not really. All the radios have are compromises, and that's the one thing you'll find with just about anything you purchase anymore. The wind-up radio, most of the stuff inside it is the actual little dynamo or generator it uses to power the radio. The actual electronics in it is not really all that great. It's functional, but not all that great. It's like a little transistor radio you used to put, a 9-volt battery in. And
I used to have one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's kind of okay, but every time I see those, I go, okay, it's a gimmick. Because the wonderful part is you can go to, any store just about and buy 24 packs of AA batteries. They're incredibly cheap. So,
Great.
You know.
Yeah, I had got one of those, and I can't even hear anything up at the retreat because of where it's located. So, what good was that?
I'm glad I didn't waste my money then.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
No problem at all. I'm glad I was able to help.
Well, okay, folks. Well, thank you, Chipper.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, let's see. It looks like we have Wheatree in the queue. Wheatree, are you ready to come in, hon?
Sure am.
Hey, Wheatree, how are you doing today?
I'm tired. I've been camming, but you already knew that. So.
And you're doing bullion too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. My God, I didn't think I'd ever get that stuff reduced down.
No. So what question you got here for Carl?
Well, my question for Carl is, okay, you know, where our property is up in Oklahoma, we got to drop down this long, big hill to get down to Mom and Dad's place, which is about 10 miles away. What would he suggest as far as some kind of radio, CB or something like that I can communicate back and forth with them? And they're in their late 80s.
Okay. About 10 miles downhill, and I'm glad you said you were up on a hill because that's wonderful. Because the higher you are, the farther you can transmit.
Yeah, try that with a phone. We don't even get cell service down there at the Mom and Dad's place.
Yeah, so
maybe
they're
if the street positioned a certain way, you might get service.
Right, and what I'm thinking is what you would need down there, the very simplest would probably be a couple of 2-meter amateur radio handy-talkies, which I'll, again, discuss in detail a bit more.
Okay,
but you
good.
probably would have to put a small outside antenna down at your folks' place so they could hear you.
Okay.
And we'll get into that a little bit. I don't want to start out really, really technical until, you know, we get past the other ones.
Yeah, just as long as you give me a brand or something to look for.
Brands, there's tons of them. A good place to go look at is a firm out in Ohio called Universal Radio. And they're actually on the web. It's like www.universal-radio.com. Family-owned. You know, worst case scenario, if you pick up the phone and you call them and you explain your situation or where you're at, and tell them, you know, what your budget looks like for this, and again explain that you've got 80-year-old parents down there, they can probably come up over the phone with an ideal solution for you.
Oh.
Again, really nice folks, and I've had a lot of good luck with them. And I mean over years and years and years.
Good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Wheatree.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, hon. Okay, I'm going to I'm going to let Carl get a drink and take a break for a minute, and I'm going to take care of some business, and then we'll get right back into it.
All right. That'll give me about 3 minutes, and I'll be right back.
Oh, boy, I hope I can give you that much. Go ahead.
Just yak. You know how to yak.
I will. All right. So, folks, don't forget, Tuesday at 8 p.m. will be the Crooked Path to Preparedness. There's no such thing as I can't. Sissy Bob has a very encouraging and inspirational guest, Helen from Homesteading in a Rental. Helen and her husband, Tim, have a very inspirational story they have agreed to share with her. They are currently doing their best to homestead and prep with what they have and where they are. It will amaze you with what they do and what they have. Sissy Bob learned about homesteading in a rental when they messaged her one day to ask a question. She checked out their channel and was amazed at what they were doing. Later the same month, Sissy Bob, and I think Sissy Bob's in the chat room, hi Sissy Bob, came across a submission to one of her favorite magazines and realized it was homesteading in a rental. She was floored by their story and encouraged by what they did when faced with adversity. Tim and Helen can teach us many lessons. So, excuse me, I got a frog in my voice too. So don't forget to check out Sissy Bob. she takes second and fourth Tuesdays. We kind of share Tuesdays, which is really nice because we're both kind of on the same wavelength. So, hi, Sissy. Excuse me, my voice. So, you know, getting your radio and knowing what kind to get, I mean, Wheatree had it perfectly correct in the fact that you got to look at your situation. You got to look at what your expectations are. You know, like if I want to talk to Prepper Chickie when SHTF happens, I need to be able to get to Prepper Chickie, whether I get to her through other people, you know, we set up a chain call system, or whether you get through to them with a system that you have that can do it. And so all these are lessons that we need to learn, but you need to start with the basics. You need to make sure that if power goes out, you have something you can at least hear that a tornado is coming your way, or a bomb was just dropped, you know, 3 miles away from you. Well, I guess if it was 3 miles away from you, you'd know it was there. So, but,
all right, I'm back, Bear. You can slow down a bit here.
Okay, cool. All right, folks. Before we move on, he's going to go into some more information, and the call-in number is going to be 347-202-0228. And Carl, I'm going to ask you real quick, do you need more than 15 minutes?
No, 15 minutes is just about fine.
Okay, great. Then I think we're going to be okay on the time, because we can extend it if we needed to.
Okay, that sounds good. I might ask for that. I also have to get up way early in the morning to go to work, too. So.
Okay. We'll try to squeeze it all in, and we, like I said, we do have Preparing for Life Storms YouTube, where we're going to have this posted, and people can ask questions, and hopefully we can get Carl to go check it out occasionally and answer some of those questions.
And I'd be happy to do that again. And, of course, there's always a Tuesday in September or October, if need be, I can get back on with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, the floor is yours, Carl.
All right, let me talk now about ham radio. Starting with, you need to be licensed if you're going to use ham radio. If you're going to talk on ham radio, I should say. One of the wonderful things that's happened recently is that they've removed the code requirement. This is, again, in the United States. There is no need to learn the code. There are only written tests to get your licenses. There's a technician license that covers 17 bands above 50 megahertz. Oh, let me talk quickly about meters, too. You'll hear people talk about this meter band and that meter band. Basically, the FCC plus the International Telecommunications Union has authorized certain bands for ham radio use, and they have frequencies in megahertz. And then just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, like, for example, the FM broadcast band is 88 to 108 megahertz. Well, technicians have 17 bands above 50 megahertz, which are spread all the way out, plus 4 high-frequency bands, which are for long-distance use. General class is the next level up of licenses. They have all 27 ham bands available to them. And finally, the uppermost class of license is an amateur extra, and they basically get a bit more spectrum. So how do you get your license? Well, that's very simple. If you do an internet search for amateur radio clubs, just go on to Google, do amateur radio clubs, and look in your area, you will find probably 1 or 2 clubs at a minimum in your county. You'll find out when they meet. Go to a meeting. Talk to the hams that are there. Ask them about, I need to find an Elmer. I need to take, a test for my license. What can I use to study for a license? Is this whole thing terribly expensive, et cetera, et cetera? An Elmer will pop up. These guys will bend over backwards to bring new hams into the hobby. So it's a very wonderful thing, and the clubs are a lot of fun. You get to see a bunch of folks hanging around. It probably would look geeky to you otherwise, but they're just amazingly friendly folks. They bend over backwards to help people. The technician test is about 35 questions, and you need to get 26 of them correct. And they're not terribly difficult questions. They have to do a little bit with radio theory, what bands a technician's allowed to operate in, what modes of operation, for example, AM, FM, single sideband, that sort of thing. Another help is on Amazon. You will find that if you do a search on Amazon for Amateur Radio License Study Guide, you'll find many books that are put out to take you through the questions and answers for the technician license and the general class license. Very simple, self-study, not really a problem, written basically on a 6th grade reading level. As a matter of fact, I know 2 hams in the club here locally. One is 9 and one is 8. So it can't be that difficult to get a license. All right. Any questions? Anybody calling in about a question about where to find an Elmer or clubs or that sort of thing before I go into 2-meter handy talkies?
Come on, folks. This is your chance to get your questions asked and answered. Call-in number is 347-202-0228. And remember to press 1. I'm not seeing anybody in the queue at this minute.
All right.
They all want the time extended, but they're just not in the queue.
All right. Well,
what is an Elmer? Wait a minute. Someone asked, what is an Elmer?
An Elmer is an amateur radio operator that assists a non-ham in getting a license. Also, the Elmer will assist you in setting up your station at home, and basically probably would be your first contact on the radio when you do your first amateur radio call.
Okay, and then another question we have is, if you take the test, isn't it easier for them to find you if you use a ham? So I guess if they're, folks, if you're on YouTube, they already know where you're at. So, but let's not go there. But is it easier for them to find you?
Why would they be looking for you? That's the first question to ask yourself. And then, secondly, as long as you have a mailing address, you can, for example, now get an amateur radio license. You didn't used to be able to. You had to have a physical street address, but now you can have a P.O. box. And if they can find you with all your furniture in a post office box, more power to them.
Wonderful. That is really good to know, because that changes, I think, a lot of people's opinion about getting a ham license. And then we said, how much to get a cheap setup? So maybe you can hit that at the end.
Well, actually, I'll hit that now by talking about probably the most important ham radio set is a 2-meter handy talkie. 2 meters, by the way, is 144 megahertz to 148 megahertz. And it generally operates on FM. You can pick those up somewhere on the order of $100 to $125 for the less expensive models. And if you get one with all the bells and whistles and complete shortwave coverage and everything else, they can go up to $400 or $500. But there's no real need to get one with all the bells and whistles. A very basic set would run you between $100 and $150.
Now, when you say handy talkie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that like what I have, a ham radio that's a walkie-talkie?
Yes.
That's just a little thing? Okay, so that's called that. Gotcha. That's what I have.
Okay. That radio can do 2 things. It can talk from itself to another radio, and that's called simplex, or it can connect to a repeater and actually transmit on one frequency and receive on another. If you can imagine amateur radio operators have built repeaters all across the country. There are tens of thousands of them. They are powered not only off the grid, but a lot of them run off of generators that can run anywhere between a week and 2 weeks. Some of them are even solar powered. Their antennas are on very high towers, so they have a long-range communication possibility. So you can be sitting there on the ground at your retreat with your handy-talkie, transmit on one frequency that goes to the receiver of the repeater. It then rebroadcasts it over its transmitter over a very high antenna over a wide range. So your range can be 30, 40, and even 50 miles from that little handy-talkie that you hold.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that I had a YouTuber help me set up the repeaters on it because I couldn't figure out how to do it. And it's really interesting just to sit and listen to it.
Especially during an emergency. Then you find out that these guys, instead of talking about antennas and radio sets and health conditions for the 70-year-old guys, all of a sudden they become consummate pros, talking about where to get this, where to find that. The nice other part of the handy-talkies is one of the most useful accessories for it is a AA battery pack that fits on it, because you can use it with AA batteries, which can be recharged if you have the rechargeable kind. The sets that I have here at the house all cost about $125. I added another $24 for the AA battery packs, and that's the only accessories I have for them. Oh, and earphones, so I could listen privately.
And see, I ended up having to get an antenna that was an adapter to screw on so that I could get reception outside of my retreat. Yes,
well, it may be that the distance from your retreat to the repeater. And those antennas are small. They're not that big, and they're not terribly expensive. Again, I will send the URL for Universal Radio. I've had a lot of good luck with them. If you do a cost comparison between them, for example, and Ham Radio Outlet or Amazon.com, you'll find their prices are very, very good. And again, I don't have any connection with them, just that I've used them for year upon year upon year, and had a lot of good luck with them because they're family oriented. Now let me go into, and we have about 8 minutes left on the normal thing, long-range communication.
G-Man figured you need a couple extra minutes, so.
Oh, that's nice.
If you want to get a drink real quick and, and keep on talking, we're happy.
Well, I also wonder if anybody's called in or has any questions, because usually on the 2 meet.
Yeah, they're not calling in. There's tons of questions going on, but it looks like we got a couple of Elmers in the chat room that are doing really good at giving them the answers almost at the same time that you've been given the answers, because they're asking the same thing you're talking about.
Well, hopefully they're getting the same answers, so we're all consistent.
I hope so. So far, so good.
Oh, good, because, there's nothing like opinions. Let me talk now about high frequency and long range communications. And the big question that you need to ask yourself is, do you really need it? Do you need to talk at long distances, or do you need to just receive? If you just need to receive, a shortwave radio set, a small one, would be just fine. You can hear, regional broadcasts, etc. If you need to talk to somebody probably farther away than 30 to 50 miles from your location, you're going to have to get on HF. And to do that, you're going to actually have to upgrade your license to a general class ticket, because you don't do the code. Also, the cost of HF communications, even if you buy used gear, is relatively expensive. Ballpark figure, used set $500, brand new set up to $1,300. That doesn't include the antennas. So that's, again, why you have to question, do I really need to go long range?
Wow.
The nice part about high-frequency communications is all the different bands that the hams have allow the use of the frequencies for propagation from regional to cross-country. And, it works beautifully, but I would suggest strongly that if you think you need high-frequency or long-range communications capabilities, go to the club, talk to an Elmer, and see what would be the best fit for you.
Okay, let me pause you here. We got two people in the queue. We've got Bob first in the queue.
All right, Bob, go ahead.
Well, good evening there, Carl, and thanks for getting me on here. I'm KI4HEE over here in Conway, South Carolina, and I've got to tell you, you're doing a wonderful job, and I want to thank you for really putting in a good word for everybody to check with the local club. That is by far the touchstone of ham radio is the local ham radio operator in your neighborhood, and I think that's just wonderful.
Well, 73s to you, sir, and thank you for calling in.
Real quick, I just wanted to kind of help illuminate what you were saying about the handy-talkie being the integral part is actually a really great first radio to have for a new ham, because it does get them on the air relatively inexpensively. Matter of fact, it is rather inexpensive to get a good, decent little handy-talkie. And not only that, it gets you access to the repeaters that you know as well as I do that there are repeaters now that in certain areas around that are linked, that not only can you talk within 10, 15, 20 miles of your area using that small handheld radio through a link system, you can talk all the way across the state, maybe into another state. Good example here in South Carolina is the SC Hearts network, the repeater network, which gets signals all the way from North Carolina to Georgia to Florida and throughout all parts of the state of South Carolina, and is a very, very integral part of the disaster preparedness plans that the state has, as well as down to the county and local level. So keep up the good work, Carl. And by the way, check out the ham radio blog that the APN, the American Preppers Network, has. I help moderate that, and we would love to see you contribute as an author. So if you're interested, check that out, and we would appreciate it.
Oh, I thank you very much, and you flatter me. And again, 73s to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, well, we've got a few questions, and we've got Dawn in the queue still. Let me go ahead and get one question to you. Will handy-talkies hook up to an external antenna? And the answer is yes, correct? Because I do mine.
Yes, absolutely they will. They have They have two different methods generally. You have what's known as a BNC or an SMC connector, but either of those can be used with or without an adapter to hook up to an external antenna.
Okay. So let's go ahead and pull Don in the queue, and then we'll do another question, and then we'll pull Sissy Bob in, and then we'll let you get back to it. All right, go ahead, Don. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Don. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm calling because I am starting, well, I won't say from zero. Let's just say from point one. All I have done so far is I've Googled ham radio. I ordered a couple of those study guides off of Amazon that y'all were mentioning, but I've been basically too shy to contact my local club. You know what and this is not something I would normally be interested in, but then when I think about what is important to me, what's important to me is I live in Northeast Texas. All of my family is in San Antonio, Austin, the Hill Country area. And what's important to me is to be able to keep in contact with them no matter what. And it seems like this would be the best solution to that. So I want to know, what should I do? Where should I start?
Again, be brave. And here's the wonderful part about this. If you go and find a ham at a club and ask him to be an Elmer or her to be an Elmer, and it doesn't matter, it's not sex-related, and you scratch him just the tiniest bit, and you're going to find out that there's a prepper under that skin. You would not believe the number of ham radio operators that are preppers. It's unbelievable. So toss away your shyness. The folks that are there are the loveliest folks in the world. Yes, there are a couple of, there are always in any group a couple of butt heads, but most of them are just absolutely wonderful, and they'll come to your aid and rescue as required. So, yeah, toss the shyness, find a club, and, toss the shyness, find a club, and then ask and see, hey, I need an Elmer, I need help doing this. And if you explain what you want to do, they'll bend over backwards to explain what's the best method of doing it.
Yeah, I think the part people are getting hung up on is why have an Elmer, why not just get asked? But I think the Elmer will be the person who will end up saving you money in the long run. Because if you just go willy-nilly, you're going to get a system like I have that is a piece of this, a piece of that, a piece of this, a piece of that, and none of it works right. So I wish I had gotten an Elmer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that's absolutely funny, and you might not even think about it, but for example, my Elmers for home canning are Michigan Snow Pony and Bear Prepper. My Elmers for cooking something beyond hot dogs and scrambled eggs, I go out there and I look at Noreen's site and the other sites of the Homestead Honeys. So we're all using Elmers in one fashion or another. I use it for radio because you'll save a ton of money.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, I've watched Bear Prepper's videos, and I've been canning like crazy. It's just she doesn't know that I'm watching it. Whereas this is going and talking to someone in person. And like you said, it's kind of outing yourself that you're doing it. But if you say you scratch the surface, it's like-minded folks. I guess that helps a lot.
Yeah, and you don't have to tell them who you are either. You can be Patsy, or Susie. You don't have to be who you don't.
I live in a fairly small town, and my husband's pretty well known in this town.
Okay, what about having your family in San Antonio go to the Elmer?
See, I'm the one kind of dragging them along, kicking and screaming on prepping.
Okay. Not an option. Yeah,
the easy part on that one is San Antonio, I'm sure, I know Bear County has got to have 2 or 3 amateur radio clubs. So you go out to the club yourself and you just tell them, look, I'm looking into radio.
John, next time you come to San Antonio, give me a holler and you and I will go find an Elmer together.
Ah, shoot. Well, see, I'm the one that's in Northeast Texas. All the rest of them are down there.
Yeah, I know, but come for a visit, and we'll go together.
Okay.
It'll be 2 against all of them.
There you go. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. All right, let's get to one more question. We got 2 more in queue, I think. We've got, are you okay, Carl?
I'm just fine. Keep going.
Okay, Prepper Chickie's got another question. Can you get the basic just talk radio at first and then add to it later? You mean like I think she's talking about the hand walking, like handy what I talking. Have?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It comes complete. That's the lovely part about it. Again, I'm picking on universal-radio.com, but if you go there and look at their catalog, it'll say amateur VHF and UHF handy talkies, and you click in there, and you'll see a whole bunch of them listed, and you just go down and compare prices and features and figure out what's in your budget, and you'll notice that the thing is a complete set. And then they actually have options available too as well. So.
Yeah, that's what I got. But I got a Wuxen, and it was a complete set on sale, and I think I paid $174 shipping included for mine.
Yes.
So they aren't bad at all, and I love turning mine on and listening to it. I can't talk on it because I don't have a license yet, but I can sit and listen to it and start to learn and understand what they're talking about. So that's a great starting point. All right, we have.
Let me answer something real quick, okay?
Okay.
For Michigan Snow Pony, she asked in the chat room, where does one go to get ham equipment in person? Radio Shack? How about absolutely not? You have to go to a larger town, and usually there's a place called a ham radio outlet or something of that nature that'll be in hamradiooutlet.com, and if you go on the network, you can find them, and they'll show you what cities they're in. But Radio Shack is for all the little adapters and some wires and things. I'm sorry, Bear. Keep going.
Okay, no problem at all. All right, so let's go ahead and bring Sissy Bob in. Hey, Sissy Bob.
Hey, everybody. I just had a quick question. Part of it was already answered when you talked about the antennas, but when it comes to the handheld and the mobile radios, is it the same for the mobile radio, for the mobile ham radio as with the CD? So is your car like a good conductor for it, or does it? I know like the motor can interfere with it, but is it worth the upgrade to a mobile ham radio from a handheld?
In a car, yes.
Yeah.
But be advised that a mobile radio in the car is going to cost more money than a handy-talkie. And yes, you're going to have to get an antenna. Looks very much like a CB antenna. Hooks up basically the same way, too, as well. And you get much longer range because the mobile radio in the car generally puts out 5 times the power of a handy-talkie. Or more.
5 times the power, okay.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, mobile 2-meter radio sets for your car. You're talking about, 25 watts minimum. Some of them go up to 50, 75 watts. Handy-talkie, 5 to 8 watts.
Okay, so there's no way to make your handy-talkie broadcast as far other than through the repeaters and stuff. So there's no antennas or anything that you can do that would make a difference there?
Yes, I have an antenna. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can get an outside antenna and put it up and connect it via cable to your handy-talkie radio to get extended range. Also, there are amplifiers that you can plug that are 12 volt that you can plug in actually between an outside antenna and your handy-talkie and broadcast further as well too. But if you're going to go to all the expense of getting an amplifier, you might as well get a mobile set that you could actually use in your house as well. All you need is 12 volts of power for it.
Right. Okay. So, well, this is kind of related and unrelated. So if it's a 12-volt power, that means that you could just run it directly off of a solar-charged battery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great to know. Thank you.
Thank
No problem at all.
Thank you, Sissy Bob. Okay, we got, have a great evening, hon, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
All right, you mentioned that website. Can you give it to me again where you go to get the location of stores?
Okay, HRO, that's HenryRadioOscar.com. That's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's another place called universal-radio.com. That's the one I was talking about for getting parts and accessories. But Universal Radio is only in one location. They're in Ohio. Ham Radio Outlet, or HRO, has places. Yeah, somebody just kicked in the thing, hamcity.com. Yeah, they're out there. You got them. So.
Okay, great. All right. You wanna? Where'd we leave off?
We've left out pretty much to the end. I was going to take any more questions that folks have, and
oof, aren't you glad? There you go. Well, Carl, I want to thank you so much, and we may just have to have a second one of these to get a little more information, and because I think as people start to look into this and start looking up the information that you've given, they're going to have much more questions, and so I hope that you're willing to come back and join us at a later date.
Absolutely, I am, and for the gentleman from South Carolina, I'll be taking a look into his suggestion as well too, and I thank him for calling in.
Well, thank you so much, Carl.
Oh, no problem at all. You guys have a wonderful evening, and now I need to get off to bed so I can actually wake up early in the morning.
Well, there you go. Well, good night, Carl.
Good
all
night.
Right, folks.
Good night,
now,
Bear. You have a wonderful day.
You too, and thanks again for helping us out tonight.
Oh,
okay,
my
folks.
pleasure. My pleasure entirely. Good night.
Night. I will see you all a week from this Tuesday, August 21st at 8 p.m. Central Time. About now, you're all exhausted from all the gardening and the canning, and you want to do something easy with those end-of-season harvests that are just too small to can. So next time, we're going to be talking about dehydrating. What can you dehydrate and the steps required to ensure a good product? So you can also share your favorite dehydrated meals. Just send them to me, the recipes, and we'll put together a little book that you all can have, and it'll make it easier for everybody. Remember, prepping is not a fad. It's a way of life. You can find more from me on YouTube and on Facebook, also here on the first and third Tuesday of the month. I thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Good night and blessings.